This passage is about reading skills, how they have declined, and the author's suggestions on how to improve reading skills among the children. Let's read the passage before we look at the questions. The alarming reading statistics that have emerged during the pandemic present an opportunity to overhaul the reading curriculum and the teacher preparation programs in our school systems. So he said that during the pandemic, the statistics that we are getting about reading, the reading statistics we are getting are alarming. But he says this is the good opportunity. This is a good opportunity to overhaul, to totally change the reading curriculum and teacher preparation programs in our school systems. Reading this, this is what the passage is all about. But let's read and see what the author says further. Even before the pandemic, reading scores were poor, with the majority of students reading below proficient level. So even before the pandemic, reading wasn't the best strength of the students. Beyond the personal tragedy of not learning to read, it's particularly dangerous for democracy and a free society to have a generation of poor readers. One is that personally it affects a person if he cannot read, but it also affects the country because it's a danger for democracy. It's a danger for free society if you have a generation that cannot read. This is a wake-up call to get serious and follow the science of reading. So he says, therefore, it's a wake-up call for us. Now is the time for us to act and follow the science of reading. Most children need explicit direct instruction to learn how to read. Devoting a period a day to phonics and spellings gives young children grades K to 3 the foundations they need. Now the author is giving suggestions on how to improve reading skills. One, he says, give them one class a day for phonics and spellings to young children, and that will give them the foundation they need. Phonics is the Rosetta Stone. It is how we learn to decode the shapes on the page and turn them into words. The key is, it's the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a stone that gives you clues. That's the main key to it. Holds the answer. So this Rosetta Stone, phonics is like that. It's like a solution to our problem. It will tell students how to read. Those letters, which are just shapes, suddenly take the form of words through the system of phonics. Comprehension strategies are important, but no matter how effective they may be for good readers, comprehension is important and they are effective for good readers, but they don't work if you can't read the words in front of you. How can you understand? How can comprehension happen unless you understand the words that you read? Right now, too many children are on shaky ground, and as they progress in school, their poor reading skills prevent them from reading more complex material, and a cascade of trouble follows. So he said this is the problem. Children are on very shaky ground. Why? Because if they don't know how to read now, as they go to higher classes, life becomes more and more difficult. Right? So a cascade is like a waterfall. A series of problems will follow. Schools need to make big changes fast. The changes have to be big and the changes have to be made really quickly. Schools don't need open-ended, vague reading programs that ask teachers to make it up as they go. We don't need unplanned, make it up as you go programs. Reading needs to be taught systematically and teachers need training. You have to teach reading systematically. To do this, you have to train the teachers. Most teachers want training so that they can do their jobs effectively. If a teacher has to teach reading effectively, he or she has to be given the correct training to teach reading effectively. Ringing alarmist bells about learning loss seems to place the blame on students. So the statistics show learning loss in students. But according to the author, this seems to put the blame on students, so many of whom have experienced trauma over the last 4 years, yet have shown resilience. They've faced so many problems during the pandemic, but they've showed resilience. They've shown the strength to face the problems and to bounce back. Let's start by redesigning our system based on what we know about how students learn best. And then, what does the author say? How do students learn best? Engaged in relevant learning experiences. So how do students learn best? When they are engaged in relevant learning experiences. By simply focusing on catching students up, we fail to examine the problematic ways we are measuring progress and delivering instructions. We are simply focusing on catching students up. Okay, do this, do this, do this, go to the next level. And in doing this, we don't examine the problematic ways. We don't understand that we are measuring progress in a different way, in a faulty way. Let's move the conversation from loss of learning that meets students where they are and gives every child the opportunity to thrive at any time, any place, any pace, any path, any place. All right, so he says, let's move. Let's move beyond this loss of learning and go to students where they are. We'll meet students wherever they are. From where they are, we will give every child the opportunity to thrive at any time, any pace, fast or slow, any path. You can choose the way you want to learn and any place. So give the child the freedom to learn in a way that is suited to him or her. When we returned to school in the fall of 2020, I suggested to my administration that I work exclusively with grades 1 and 2. So the author is a teacher. And he says, I told the administration I want to work with students of grade 1 and 2. When kids learn to read, I was the sole reading teacher. I was the only reading teacher in a school of 450 students with a hybrid schedule that enabled me to see 45 students a week. Every week, the author interacted or taught 45 students. And in this, some of my students showed growth, even as much as 2 years. But those who would have been struggling in a normal year fell further behind. Some of the students did well. Okay, they showed growth. But those who would have been struggling even in a normal year, forget a pandemic year, they fell behind. Research shows that it is unlikely they will ever get to grade level. That's not to forget the students in grade 3, 4 and 5 who didn't get any reading intervention. So this is the sad plight. The scenario happened all over the country. A crisis in urban education is upon us. Students not going to school are falling behind in learning. Those who are already behind in learning wouldn't even finish that grade. So there's a big problem. There's an urban crisis that we are facing. Leaders at the state and university levels need to figure out what to do about it. The future of our country depends on it. All right? Easy to read passage, easy questions. From the passage, we cannot infer that the author. So which of the options cannot be inferred about the author? Believes reading to be a very important skill. Yes, author throughout the passage has emphasized that you need to know reading, so we can infer this, Believes that the vast majority of students should know how to read well. Yes, we can infer this. Is too alarmist when he says that the pandemic has led to a severe decline in reading skills. Is he going a little too far? Is he just raising fear and alarm in us by saying that? No, he has been very objective in telling us this is the decline in reading skills. Therefore, this is not correct. This is our answer. Believes that the current metric for measuring reading ability is flawed. Yes, he says that the way we are measuring progress, the way we are dealing with this problem is all wrong. So A, B and D have been mentioned. We cannot infer that the author is too alarmist. He's just stating the fact and giving us solutions to it. Phonics, reading from an early age. Therefore, the answer is C.